freedom, equality, brotherhood are three Godheads of the soul. They cannot be really achieved through the external machinery of society or by man so long as he lives only in the individual and the communal ego. When the ego claims liberty, it arrives at competitive individualism. And that is what we see in capitalist countries. When it asserts equality, it arrives first at strife, then at an attempt to ignore the variations of nature, and as the sole way of doing that successfully, it constructs an artificial and machine-made society, and that we see in communist and socialist nations. A society that pursues liberty as its ideal is unable to achieve equality. A society that aims at equality will be obliged to sacrifice liberty. Now, for the ego to speak of fraternity is for it to speak of something contrary to its nature. All that it knows is association for the pursuit of common egoistic ends. And the utmost that it can arrive at is a closer organization for the equal distribution of labor, production, consumption, and enjoyment. Yet is brotherhood the real key to the triple gospel of the idea of humanity. It's like a triangle. You have liberty on one side and equality on the other. And as long as you remain at the level of the ego, liberty and equality can never harmonize. They cancel each other. But if you rise in consciousness and you try to achieve brotherhood, real brotherhood, that's when liberty and equality become one. And that's how you can harmonize them. The union of liberty and equality can only be achieved by the power of human brotherhood. And it cannot be founded on anything else. But brotherhood exists only in the soul, and by the soul. It can exist by nothing else. It is the practical recognition of this truth. It is the awakening of the soul in man, and the attempt to get him to live from his soul and not from his ego, to which we must arrive. But can this alone be done? Sri Aurobindo came upon earth to teach this truth to men. He told them that man is only a transitional being, living in a mental consciousness, but with the possibility of acquiring a new consciousness, the truth consciousness, and capable of living a life perfectly harmonious, good and beautiful, happy and fully conscious. Mankind, says Sri Aurobindo, is of a less terrestrial mold than some would have him to be. He has an element of the divine that the practical politician ignores. This is why, Mother says, we are not here to do only a little better what the others do. We are here to do what the others cannot do because they do not have the idea that it can be done. The fundamental position of Vedanta is I am He. Thou too art He. There is therefore no I and thou, but only He. God is my true self. God is the true self of my neighbor, Hari. If therefore Harry enjoys untold riches. It is I who am enjoying them. For Harry is myself, not my body in which I am imprisoned, or my desires by which my body is made miserable, but my true self, the real man, the real being within me, who is the witness and enjoyer of all this drama of the world. Once I experience this truth, I can take as much pleasure in the riches of Harry as if I myself were enjoying them. For I can thenceforth go out of my own self and so enter into the self of Harry, that his pleasure becomes my own. To do that, I have simply to break down the illusory barrier of associations which confines my sense of self to my own body, mind, and vitality. That this can be done is a common experience of humanity, to which the name of love is given. Human evolution rises through love and towards love. This truth is instinctively recognized by all the great religions. But love, in the sense which religion attaches to the word, depends on the realization of oneself in others. If, as Christian theology says, the real man in me is different and separate from the real man in another, there can be no feeling of identity. A separate individual self will live its own life, pursue its own gratification or its own salvation. It can have no ground, no impulse to love another as itself, because it cannot feel that the other is itself. The mistake science has made, it borrows from Christianity. It is that action and emotion can be directed towards beings distinct from oneself. If science teaches men to regard themselves as distinct and purely corporeal beings, with no connection with others, except such as may be created by physical contact and the communication of the senses, it is obvious that the human will, under the obsession of this belief, will inevitably shape its action and thought in accordance. And that spells, in the end, a colossal selfishness. An increasing sensuality, lust of power, riches, comfort, and dominion, a monstrous and egoistic brutality. If man believes himself to be an animal, he will act like an animal and exalt the animal impulse into his guide. The sense that this is I, and that is you, and that I must take this or that, or else you will take it, that is the basis of all selfishness. And so long as the difference between I and you exists, hatred cannot cease. Covetousness cannot cease. War cannot cease. Evil and sin cannot cease. And because sin cannot cease, sorrow and misery cannot cease. Paradise, says Sri Aurobindo, cannot be made upon the basis of food and drink, upon the equal division of goods, or even upon the common possession of goods. For always, the mine and thine, the greed, the hate will return again, if not between this man and that man, yet between this community and that community. Christianity hopes to make men live together like brothers, a happy family, loving and helping each other. Perhaps it still hopes, though there is little in the state of the modern world to flatter its dreams. But still, it is the Christian ideal which dominates the best European thought. And the Christian ideal is the ideal of a united family. Surely it is a noble ideal, but it implies difference. Have you ever watched a big united family, a joint family, behind its outward show of strength and unity? What jarring, what dissensions, what petty malice and hatred! And then finally, one day, a crash, a war, a case in the law courts, a separation forever. We may never have a paradise on earth, but if it is ever to come, it will come not when all mankind are as brothers, for brothers jar and hate as much and often more than mere friends or strangers, but when all mankind has realized that it is one self. The Vedanta provides, in the realization of a single self and the illusory character of all division, the only real explanation of this higher or spiritual love. Altruism in the light of this one profound revealing truth becomes natural because I am not really preferring another to myself, but my wider, truer self to my narrower, false self, God who is in all, to my single mind and body. It is inevitable because that is my way of evolution. As I have risen from the animal to the man, so must I rise from the man to the God. But the basis of Godhead is the realization of oneself in all things. The true aim and end of evolution is the wider and wider realization of the universal Brahman, the universal divine. Towards that goal, we progress. With whatever tardiness, with whatever lapses, yet inevitably, from the falsehood of matter to the truth of the spirit. We can accelerate this evolution by practicing the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo. And Auroville has been created for those who aspire to do just that. Auroville has been created for superhumanity, for those who want to surmount their ego and renounce all desire, to prepare themselves for receiving the supermind. They alone are true Aurovillians. For millennia, we have been developing outer means, outer instruments, outer techniques of living. And finally, those means and techniques are crushing us. The sign of the new humanity is a reversal in the standpoint and the understanding that inner knowledge and inner technique can change the world and master it without crushing it. Auroville is the place where this new way of living is being worked out. It is a center of accelerated evolution, where man must begin to change his world through the power of the inner spirit. At once, the key of the problem is shifted from without to within, from the visible externalities of social and political adjustment to the spiritual life and truth, which can alone provide its key.
How can humanity become one?
By becoming conscious of its origin.
What is the way of making the consciousness of human unity grow in man?
Spiritual education. That is to say, an education which gives more importance to the growth of the spirit than to any religious or moral teaching or to the material so-called knowledge.
What is a change of consciousness?
A change of consciousness is equivalent to a new birth, a birth in a higher sphere of existence.
How can a change of consciousness change the life upon earth?
A change in human consciousness will make possible the manifestation upon earth of a higher force, a purer light, a more total truth.